Welcome into the Toyota Lounge for the DNVR Avalanche Podcast, presented by your Front Range Toyota dealerships. It is officially Olympic season. It is the Summer Olympics, so, there is land hockey. I couldn't tell you the first thing about a single land hockey team, though. I don't know anything about it.
I've never heard of this.
What?
Oh, like field hockey?
Field hockey, yeah.
Oh, okay.
No, this show's about ice hockey.
I was just as lost. Don't worry.
Hey, it's okay. I have Olympic brain right now, so I just say stuff. But we figured, international competition going on. It would be a good time to discuss some of the international rosters and competition. That's the ice hockey, I suppose, as a whole. The Four Nations is NHL players only, but we'll probably talk about potential Olympic rosters for some of these places too in this show. So the full gamut of international hockey when it comes to that. I want to start with perhaps the most obvious question about international hockey. One, is Canada still the favorites in all international hockey competitions? And when you answer that yes, how much longer until they're not?
Oof. Man, oh man. It's a good question. Really good question. I think, all right, here's what I'll say. Back then when I was growing up, I was fortunate enough to be in Montreal growing up, and every few years or so they had the Canada Cup, right? And that was like amazing, to be honest with you. I remember going to those games when I was little. It was so awesome. And it was Canada, obviously US. It was, Czechoslovakia back then, right? Because they were together. Russia, they were always called, whatever, the Soviet Union but they were always powerful. And then you had Suomi, right? Finland. Mm-hmm. And then you had Sweden. And I'm trying to remember who else was at the Canada Cup.
The US.
Boy, it was, US was there. That's what I mean. But it was always, obviously, you could almost think like it was always going to be Canada versus Russia in the finals. It just was. Like, it just was. They were that much more dominant. I do believe 1990 Jagr, which was my draft, coming over, and Jagr was fourth overall, third overall, whatever he was. That was the Owen Nolan year. So it coming over, then all of a sudden there was a big European invasion. From right around 1990s plus. But like I said, back then it was always Canada or Russia. U.S. was actually not very good. I think the 1980 Miracle on Ice kind of, put things a little bit more in perspective. But it's still in the 90s. You were still playing catch up. I do believe until about 1996, that World Cup that I keep telling you guys was unbelievable. That summer there of 96 after the Avs Stanley Cup there, where U.S. surprised everybody and won the World Cup. Beat Canada. It was a 2 out of 3, whatever it was, 3 out of 5 series. I don't remember what it was, but it was unbelievable hockey. And Canada, I think, always had the upper hand. I would say that now, with the European invasion post 1990, with the amazing, and I'll say it with a capital A, amazing, USA hockey development, in a sense that with the NTDP and all that kind of stuff, it's just been unreal. The biggest growth for me has been the U.S. Because now what I can say is, if you're saying the Olympics were going to be this year, which there will be, obviously, what is it, next year or the year after, whatever, we're almost there. You could pick Canada, you could pick U.S. You can never discard the Russians. Swedes are always there, or even Finland. So I think if you pick, or you go to Vegas, or you go to Circa Bets, or whatever it is that you do, I don't think you can go wrong. So I don't think it's that much like back then, that to answer your question, which was obviously back then was Canada or Russia. Now I think you got 4 or 5 nations. You can say, hey, they're going to win. They can win. So I think it's so big now. The margin of it's kind of like the NHL. There's a little bit of parity in international hockey and who I think can win. And again, always remember Olympics, stuff like that. It's a 2-week tournament. Anything can happen, right, in those little short tournaments. So I would say I think Canada still has the edge because of reputation, not because I'm biased or, I'm being honest. Like, I think Canada probably would have the reputation and the big names still, you know what I mean? Like, you're still looking at Crosby and McKinnon and, Makar, and the list goes on, and McDavid. So right away you have to be at the top. But I do believe that I'm not saying by any means that they're going to win. I'm saying that if you pick any one of those 4 or 5 nations, you can have a big chance to win your bet.
It sounds like a lot of pre-cope from someone who's getting ready for Canada to lose to me.
Well, I wouldn't. Honestly, if you asked me today, and I am Canadian, you guys know that. Like, if you asked me today, I'm picking the U.S.
All right.
That's just my gut.
The Canadians
Like,
picking the U.S. What does Team U.S. have? Are we picking Canada?
No, I feel good about U.S. I really like the way that Finland stacks up too, and that's just in the immediate. But to your question about what to project for the future, I think where Canada has had the edge has been volume. They just have so many players represented in the NHL because it's a very popular sport among its countrymen. And I think with the growth of hockey in countries like Finland, it has allowed for even more talent to come out of those countries and represent their nation. And it's why I think before, players on the fringes of the roster representing their country, for Canada, for example, are still really elite players.
Yeah.
I think that as more and more players come from growing up in Finland playing hockey, the fringes of those rosters start to fill out and look better too. And that's where I think that Finland has become extremely competitive. That's where I think you see, like Czechia, there's just more and more representation coming from these countries and helping to fill out around the edges and complement those players up top. Because obviously Canada, US, up top, everybody knows who those players are. It's true even for Sweden and for Finland, but I do think that along the edges, it's just gotten more competitive for all of these countries.
Yeah, just to prove your point here, we can pull up Canada's roster. And yeah, obviously everyone knows the names at the top. You can have a top line in Canada of McKinnon, McDavid, and Crosby, which is like stupid. But even at the bottom, you still have Zach Hyman is the guy I threw on their fourth line, 50-goal scorer this year. On their fourth line. It's ridiculous. And there are plenty of dudes, people will be mad that I left off this Canadian roster. I didn't put Drew Doughty on this roster. If you wanted a more well-rounded team, you could put Ryan O'Reilly at the bottom of this roster. Canada is so rich with depth of elite NHL players that there are 6, 8, 10 dudes I left off this roster that you could make a genuine argument for being on it. It's a bit silly to a certain extent how deep a team like Canada is.
Well, my take on Team Canada has always been the same, and what I'll say, and it's every year the same. Megan just touched on it a little bit. The depth of the pool of the bodies you're choosing from, it's so much bigger than others, right? And hence the fact that now you can make mistakes compared to other nations, because you might make mistakes on picking your team, where I think other nations are more like, yeah, you can scrape like 12 forwards, right? You know what I mean? And I'm, like you just said, you left off a lot of guys there. And I think it comes down to roles. It's always been like that. You see that at World Juniors all the time. You have to accept your role. Like if I'm just taking your lineup right there, Zach Hyman, 50-goal scorer, hey, on this team, you might play 7 minutes a night. It's a different role, and you have to be able. And it was like that with the Canada Cups back then. And I remember, guys being left off and being pissed off because they were left off. But then they would put dudes like Rick Tocchet, for example, or guys like you're like, what? You're taking Rick Tocchet, but you're not taking Steve Yzerman or Denny Savard, or things like that. And it was more about the puzzle. You got to be able to make sure that it's about playing and winning the game. And if you have 12 forwards that are all like Crosby, McDavid, or Nate, you're not winning. It's not going to happen, because it's not how you win. It doesn't matter if it's the NHL, international hockey. You got to have a little mixed bag of everything. And, for example, Verhaeghe, Suzuki, they got to be, and Suzuki's such a smart player, but Verhaeghe's got to be able to be like, yeah, I'm not going up there on that power play. And I might not touch the ice for 12 or 13 minutes. And I tell you all the time, it's not freaking easy to do that. And so you got to make sure that you pick the right guys that will be able to play limited minutes and accept their rules. And I think Canada and U.S. to a certain extent too, which is awesome, because what you see is the growth of USA hockey, which is awesome, is they can make more mistakes than, I would say, Sweden or Finland, on picking their rosters. And I think you're seeing it right there. And like your comment of leaving off like 6, 7, 8 guys, obviously, and we could go more, depending on choice, right? On who you like. But yeah, like Ryan, for me, I would have Ryan there, so that again, I'm not arguing you. I'm saying that, and it might come down to that, right? Because you don't know what they're going to want, how they're going to build their
exactly.
team, so.
And that's the thing with Team Canada. Every year at these international things, you'll see them target some guy that they really like that maybe not necessarily is in that conversation of elite names you might think of. So,
and this isn't a criticism of this projected lineup.
You're free. Feel free to criticize it.
Emphasize this is a lineup that doesn't have Bedard in it, Sam Reinhart, Owen Power, and so to illustrate that point that there are some big names not even in this projected lineup that could draw in for Team Canada, and it's extremely competitive. It's competitive to make it competitive. And I think the area that this current Team Canada looks the most vulnerable is goaltending compared to the other
100%.
countries. And as we start talking about them, we can kind of do this side by side, but everything else about Canada projects so strong.
Yeah, and you hit it right on the head. And don't get me wrong, Jordan Binnington and Stuart Skinner are NHL caliber goaltenders. But as we get into some of the other goaltenders on these lineups, they're very clearly a step below what some of these other teams have. And for Canada, that feels a little weird.
And we're talking about Cooper, correct? Cooper's coaching. And,
Cooper is the coach, yes.
And Doug is Doug Armstrong's one of the managers, correct?
Yeah, in the front office, whatever you want to call it, yeah.
It's Doug is at the lead, correct? I believe.
Yeah.
Man,
Yes. Yes.
I looked at rosters. I looked at names. I didn't even think about. So a lot of times you'll have some familiarity too with Cooper and his guys. So obviously you see, like you said, Point, Stamkos there. They might have. I know Stamkos has gone to Nashville, but obviously been with them for 8, 9 years, whatever how long Cooper's been there. But yeah, sometimes it comes down to that, and that's where Thomas might. And again, it's not biased, but it's just that you're so familiar with those players, like Thomas, for example.
Sure.
With Doug Armstrong, and so those are. I like what you picked. Again, there's always a little bit of older guys in Crosby and Marchand by that time. He's still up there in age, and Stamkos, but there's some young blood, and like you said, there's even younger blood like Bedard and stuff like that's not even on there. So it's gonna be interesting to see. I like the fact that you put Taves there. I do believe that I would put him there as well, especially in a 2-week
Talk about
tournament.
that familiarity. Yeah, exactly.
Easy.
Yeah, in a 2-week tournament, it makes a big freaking difference, because what if Bouchard? Pardon me there. What if Bouchard and Morris just don't mix? You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, you don't have time. You don't have time to say like, oh yeah, we'll go for a burger together, and then we'll, you know what I mean, and a couple practices or a couple games. Sometimes it's too late. So you really got to look at those things, and that might give, for example, Devon the edge on somebody else that you omitted from that list, for example.
Doughty or somebody, yeah.
Sure.
And for what it's worth, this is a starting lineup. These teams do carry a 13th forward, extra defenseman, things like that. So whoever your favorite player I left off can just be the healthy scratch. It's fine. But I want to look at that, and then I want to swap over to the U.S. and kind of compare these lineups, because the U.S. is extremely talented as well. That top line of Matthews, Eichel, and Tkachuk, 2 Stanley Cup winners there, and the arguably greatest goal scorer of this generation. Probably not even arguably, he just is the best goal scorer of his generation. It feels like it's kind of less deep than Canada, though. Not that it isn't deep, but you look at the bottom of Canada's lineup, guys like Hyman down there, guys like Suzuki down there, compared to a fourth line that I have here for the U.S. of Keller, Larkin, and DeBrincat. Don't get me wrong, really good hockey players. Just feels a little bit short to me compared to Canada, but maybe you guys feel differently.
It's a little hard for me to see. Are both the Tkachuks represented?
I did not put Brady on
Brady's
here,
not
no.
in there? Okay. I do think this does illustrate, though, the point around the fringes. It's like Clayton Keller, other Tkachuk.
Yeah.
I don't know if Kyle Connor's up there.
He is not.
JT Miller, maybe.
Miller is on there, yeah.
Okay. It still doesn't feel maybe quite as strong, because I'm trying to think, but in the last one, we didn't have Sam Reinhart represented in Team Canada. And
Right.
it's like side by side, the guys who didn't make the cut for Team Canada, even for those extras, you might prefer at the bottom of a lineup compared to some of the players represented here. And that's not to demerit the players that are on the third and fourth lines in the forward group for Team USA. It just is a little bit of a drop off.
And for what it's worth, I did try to go with a pretty, I don't know if I would say young U.S. team.
Yeah, Caulfield could probably
Yeah. He was like
Be
one of my last cuts.
an extra in there, but he's an interesting piece.
I avoided older guys a lot, too. There's a pretty darn good argument that Joe Pavelski should be on this team. But I wanted to go with a little bit younger with the
I like
lineup that I made. So,
Yeah, I like it. I mean, right away jumps at me. Goes with the comment that Casey's saying right there too. Like, for me, goaltending is so much more better in
yeah,
Canada.
for sure.
You know what I mean? I mean, Hellebuck. I mean, not the Hellebuck we saw in the playoffs, but
The Vezina winning
Hellebuck's-
version of Hellebuck.
Yeah, the Vezina winning and Ottinger I like. So right away you got a two-headed monster right there. That's a lot better than Team Canada in my book. And then you look at that back end, boy. I mean, can they move the puck there? That's pretty to watch. I mean, that's pretty. You know what I mean? And then
I want to get
But
into
what
that
I'm-
conversation, but I
Yeah.
do very quickly here. Almost forgot. We are brought to you all by BetterHelp. BetterHelp out there wanted to make sure you are taking care of yourself, especially on the mental side of things. Make sure you're getting in with therapy, and BetterHelp wants to make that as easy as possible. It's entirely online, and all you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire, and you can get matched with a therapist inside of a week. And the cool part is, even if you end up not liking that situation, you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try today. Again, they pride themselves on being super easy to use and giving access to even people that are just starting out. Maybe they haven't done a whole lot of therapy in their lives. It's an option for them to use. So go check it out if you haven't had the opportunity. We've talked a lot, I think, this offseason about how important the mental side of hockey is. That applies to life, too. You gotta remember the mental side of things and keep yourself in the right mindset to have a good life, just in general. So go check out BetterHelp today. Go to BetterHelp.com/DNVR to let them know we sent you over there, and you'll get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/DNVR. Once you've got your therapy session all set up, make sure you're also earning yourself a little bit of money with the Circa Sportsbook. Go get it with Circa right now. They don't have any of the fancy nonsense. They're not bombarding you with notifications and messages of all these deals that you can get. They just want to give you the best lines, straight up. So you can go get their bets. You'll see a lot of these places do pick'ems that are like -115, -120. At Circa, you can go get those types of lines at -105. So they just want to give the best odds for the real gamblers out there that know what they're looking for and want to get in on the best options. Go check out Circa today. You can go to circasports.com to download their app and, maybe check out their casino. Consider staying. Use code DNVR20 over at Circa Resorts and Casinos. If you're staying in Vegas, make sure you stay with them. But go check out their sportsbook today. Again, circusports.com. Download their app on there today. Okay. Back in second period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast. Sorry to cut you off, Eric, but you're jumping into the next point I wanted to get to, which is, let's be honest, I built a defense that moves the puck really well because that's what I really like. Probably some room for some guys that actually play a bit more defense on that that decor, though, yeah?
Is Slavin in there?
I put Shea instead of Slavin.
Okay. That's where it's like you want the defensive D. Okay.
Yeah.
Between Shea or Slavin, depending on Brady Shea's health. Like
Yeah,
Slavin
for sure.
maybe
There's a
the
couple of
option there.
guys that I
It's
was like, they'll be
Linsky's
healthy.
represented. I like Keandre Miller as like a guy to consider
He'd
in that
have been my
group.
seventh.
Yeah. But I like the way this stacks up.
Yeah. No, yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to ask, you kind of mentioned it with Canada with, hey, maybe these guys don't gel. Is it too aggressive? And should you be looking for maybe more steady defensemen when it comes to these, hey, you meet up 5 days before the tournament to have your first practice? Do you get a little bit more reliability out of players like that, or is it worth taking the risk of some of these high wire act style D?
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on the attitude as a staff or management or coaches that they're going to take, in the sense that which direction they want to take. USA, who's coaching? Is it Sullivan that's coaching?
I don't know USA's coach off the top.
I'm having a brain fart too. I mean,
We'll find
whatever.
it.
I looked it up yesterday, but anyway,
Sully.
it all depends. Yeah. There you go. All right, so man, oh man, like you might think that like Slavin or Shea or whatever, which brings a little size. Listen, Werenski is not a physical guy, but he's got some good reach, good length. Hughes on the smaller side, Fox on the smaller side. Faber's not the biggest guy, but McAvoy's like Joe said on the air the other day, McAvoy's a specimen. Like he brings a lot of physicality and some size, and obviously a little bit of a wild card, but he moving the puck, and he's a little bit intense, you know what I mean? So you do need that. You're getting that a little bit in him. I don't know which are they going to want to go, like, again, puck moving, or they want to have a little bit of a better mix, you know what I mean? And it might cost someone, like Faber, for example,
Yep.
a spot in the top six. Now, Sullivan, is he big on lefty, righty on D? Who knows? Can
For the record,
Slavin
did do that. It's all three lefties, three righties.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. And some guys can't deviate from that. There's some coaches they can't. They just can't do it. And it's or can you go Shea and Slavin and one of them plays on their offside, and depending on their history and all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? So. But there's nice options, and that's a nice lineup, and that's where I was telling you about, like, for me, on Clayton Keller, is he a better player than Brady Kachuk? No. Yes, sorry, he is. But on a 2-week tournament, do I put a Brady Kachuk in there and not a Keller / DeBrincat? Maybe, probably, you know what I mean? Especially if they're going to want to go to toe-to-toe a little bit with Canada and that guy pushed around a little bit. And I do take Brady, in the lineup, for example. So, again, but what do you see? You see choices. You see depth. You see something that you haven't seen. If I showed you, I don't know, Team Canada 84, I'll tell you one thing. I'll show you the Team USA roster, and you'll be like, who is that? Who is that? And even though you guys weren't born yet, but I'm just saying, there are guys that were, barely at any NHL experience, or you know what I mean. Where now you're talking about all-stars. Those guys are all all-stars on their own teams. You know what I mean? It's amazing what USA Hockey's been able to accomplish over the years. Obviously, like if you compare it to Canada, Canada's always been like towards the top. Now you're talking about USA that's just had an incredible ascension towards the top, and now you can put them, to go back to your initial question from 20 minutes ago, whatever it was, like, yeah, you can put Team USA towards the top. I mean, they are that good, they are that deep, and as a nation, they've done amazing at developing players like we see on this board right now. It's pretty amazing to see.
So I wanted to ask this question, as it's something I hear pretty regularly. I don't know if you'd call it common sense or just something that gets said in hockey circles when it comes to these international type of competitions. And that's the idea that when you look at some of these top teams, a Team Canada, a Team USA, oftentimes they're playing going into these tournaments where they don't have time to implement structure and things like that. They win and lose these things on the power play. They're mostly just trying to survive at 5-on-5, and then the super high-end talent that they have can take advantage of the extra space when they get those power play type opportunities. How true do you guys think that is?
Like, just imagining Connor McDavid, Crosby, McKinnon power play, it feels really true that could be
Fair
what
enough.
elevates
Fair
a
enough.
team like Team Canada to a medal.
Hard to argue with that.
The only problem I have when it comes down to this, and that's, I'll use it to the Solani Korea, signing with the. There's only one biscuit, you know what I mean, and there's one biscuit, and I'm not saying guys are selfish. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that they're used to. I mean, just think of Mac, with the Avs on the power play. You know damn well he's looking sideways at someone when he doesn't see the puck, right? I mean, because it's, hey, I want that biscuit. I need that thing. Give it to me. And that's all
Not
they're
enough
used
pucks
to.
on the ice, yeah.
That's it. That's the problem sometimes, because you just you're not used to you're used to being the guy. You know what I mean? And everything runs through you. You know what I mean? So it's like. That's what I said earlier, and I'm not saying that guys wouldn't accept their roles on on the bench or in the lineup, but certainly on the power play, you have to accept your roles as well, which is sometimes you're willing to accept it, but you're just not a fit because you have a hard time when you don't have the puck. You know what I mean? And it's just not a good mixture. So, or you put those five guys, whatever you think of, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, it's just electric, and they're just scoring at will. And I mean, you know what I mean. So you'll never know until you see it, until you try it. But yeah, you're right. Sometimes special teams do come. I mean, very important, and goaltending as well, right? Like
of course,
it is. It's a 2-week tournament. I go
get a
back
hot
to
goalie,
Matt
you
Davis.
win. Yeah.
Yeah, Matt Davis at DU. You know what I mean? It's thinking of it as a 2-week tournament. You know what I mean? Like weekend to weekend to week. I mean, he was outstanding. So a guy like that, a goalie like that can make a huge difference too in those types of short series.
For sure. There's no doubt about it. And it's been a pretty long time since we've truly seen an international tournament at the professional level with best on best, right? Yes, the World Championship exists, but the best players never go to that, really. You might get a few good players, and then it's depth guys in the NHL, and in some cases, even minor league type guys. So a question that Joey asks here that I want to answer, I'll read it, and then we'll go to break, and then we'll answer. But he asks about the Four Nations format taking place during the All-Star break, or essentially replacing the All-Star game this coming season. Will guys go 100% with effort, or is it still an exhibition game mentality? And imagine if these guys do end up going that 100% speed. Personally, I don't think they'll go 100%. I think they're saving that for the Olympics, but we'll cover that a little bit in just a minute here. Before we do that, make sure you are getting out there and getting your money taken care of. I know you're going to gamble some on one side. You can have a little bit of fun with some of your money, and then take care of the rest of it with Westera Credit Union. Go get with them. They've been here in Colorado for 90 years. They know what they're doing with 9 different locations in the Denver metro area. And they just want to make sure you're making money doing the stuff you're already doing with your money. So Jump on it, get with them. They have a ton of options, including their 6% annual percentage yield on your first $2,000 every month with their smart money checking. And as your balance grows, so does your potential to unlock additional great rates for higher balances. That's equivalent to $120 of savings per year right there off the top. You can also get additional interest on other options with your account, and you can even get a rewards debit card that has no monthly or maintenance fees and so much more. So if you like earning money by doing the things you're already doing with your checking account, visit westeracu.com/smartmoney for more details. Of course, membership eligibility required, insured by NCUA. Restrictions and conditions apply. And once your money is taken care of, make sure you're making a little bit more money. Go check out Indeed. If you're looking to get hired or you're hiring, you need Indeed. Indeed will get you out there, will get you seen. Over 350 million global visitors when it comes to Indeed, according to their internal data. That's a ridiculous amount of people to go to a website in a single month. So you will definitely get visited by a lot of people if you put your job out there for hiring. You can ditch all the busy work with Indeed, including scheduling, screening, and messaging, so you can connect with candidates faster. And it's not just finding hiring candidates. It's matching you with the best possible candidates. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/AllCity. Just go to Indeed.com/AllCity right now. Let them know this podcast sent you over there. Again, Indeed.com/AllCity. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire. You need Indeed. So, back in to this international conversation topic. Personally, part of the reason I'm not super excited about this Four Nations tournament is I expect most of these guys to be going about 80% tops at this thing. You got a sly look on your face there, Eric.
I know, that's why I hate those competitions. Man, oh man, it's a good question. I think your analogy's right. It's certainly going to be better than an all-star game.
That's a low bar, buddy. Yeah.
That's just going to say that. But that is not saying much. I do believe. Here's why I think it will be a little bit better. You're talking about. It's been a while since we've seen international competition, correct? With the NHL players.
Yep.
So now you're talking about a little bit of getting your feet wet, and then the next year it's the Olympics. Now, with that said, you are representing your country there, even though it's only 4 countries. You don't want to be that guy that looks like Kucherov at the All-Star game, right? Right? Does that make sense? You know what I mean? So,
yep.
So I think you'll see the. McDavid goes full throttle all the time. He just does. And I think you'll see Crosby leading the charge and those guys follow suit a little bit. And then if I go by your roster, take Nick Suzuki. So let's say he does happen to be there. You know what I mean? Well, I mean, it's kind of an audition when you think about it for the Olympics. You know what I mean? So I don't think you want to be that guy that just kind of goes there and it's like you leave stuff to be desired more. I mean, you're not on top of your game, and then they're like, oh, I didn't enjoy my interaction with them. Me as a coach, as the GM, but even though it is the Four Nations, it is not the Olympics. And a lot of things can happen. Guys can emerge, like you said, guys can emerge and all of a sudden, like, they're at the top of the list and they should 100% be on the roster. So I think what you'll see at the Olympics, at the Four Nations, I think you'll see a better version of what we all agree with is not very intense. I think you'll see something better, but somewhere, somehow, it is not best on best because Russians aren't there, and
of course,
we don't need to. And somewhere, somehow, it is not the Olympics, so you're not really going, your subconscious, it's not really going 100%. You know what I mean? But I do believe they'll give it a valiant effort, a better effort than we would see on a regular afternoon and wherever it would be. you'll see something better. But I think just because the fact that it is a little bit of an audition for the Olympic year or the year after.
I think it'll fall somewhere between the intensity or lack thereof of the All-Star game and like the World Championship of this last summer.
Sure.
Because it isn't best on best, but it does feature some of the league stars representing their countries.
Yep.
And it's in the postseason when guys' playoff aspirations have ended. And so
True.
there isn't really anything holding them back. And I think that's what gives that kind of tournament in the summer a little bit of an edge in terms of entertainment, because this is happening in the middle of the season. There are playoff ambitions at stake. And to everyone's point, I do think when it's the Olympics and there is an Olympic medal on the line, they will care a lot about it.
I agree, yeah.
So I imagine that it's going to be high speed and high skill, but I don't know if you'll see that other layer, that other energy and motor that you sometimes see when there is a little bit more at stake.
Yep.
And to that end, I think it will still be entertaining, more entertaining than the All-Star game. I hope guys have fun, too, because there are lots of, you just love to see a McKinnon and a Crosby get together,
Yeah.
throw in McDavid, and that should be entertaining. But my expectations are still a little bit middle, just to Eric's point, no Russia and no Czechia.
Yeah.
And so that is leaving out, and then, no German representation. It's not like huge, but that is leaving some of the league stars then out of this tournament too.
Yep.
And I think the players will recognize that. They know that they're not going to be seeing Pasternak and Draisaitl. And so I think that will also kind of just change a little bit of the intensity that they approach it with too.
I fully agree with that. Yeah, go ahead, Eric.
I'll just add to this, and we've had this discussion last year. We talked about it on the air for the All-Star game. And again, I haven't been a player. I haven't been in management. I would be lying to you to tell you that guys are always excited to go to the All-Star game, always excited to go to World Championships. I mean, World Championships over the last few seasons, you have to chase guys down. And guys don't don't answer their phones, and you know how it is. I'm not blaming them. It's a long year, and you're nagging injury, and you're gonna go add another 4 or 5 weeks to your, I don't know, and it's always tough to get guys to go. And I'm not saying that once they go, they're not proud and they don't want to represent their country. They do, but I think you're not gonna run into that problem this year with chasing guys. I think guys will be honored to be chosen. I think guys will be excited to be chosen. But I don't think you'll have to really go beat the doors down and, hey, listen, you got to make sure Makar's coming or whatever. It's going to be like, don't worry, those guys are going to be there because it is a year away from the Olympics.
I mean, either way, the NHL will be cracking the whip on them anyway on this one. I think since it's an NHL event, they say you have to go.
Can't look alive, fellas.
Yeah, it is a good point from you earlier too, Eric, that you hadn't really thought about. The top players are superstars. They tend to go pretty hard. But it really, to me, would be my Canada roster. If they bring Suzuki instead of a Connor Bedard, hey, if Suzuki has a bad tournament, guess what? Your Olympic spot is gone now. So
Yep.
It's a good point. We can move on here. Let's do Sweden's roster next. Their defense is sick. It's starting to get a little bit old, but they have a fantastic defense. That's Finland's. Sweden's Erik Karlsson, Victor Hedman, Gustav Forsling, Rasmus Dahlin, Matthias Ekholm, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, and I left some D's off that you could probably put on there over someone like an OEL. Arguably the best defense. Canada's is probably better, but they're pretty darn close when it comes to the defense. The forward side, yeah, you start to see in the depth it's probably not going to quite hold up to a Canada or something like that. I have a fourth line of Bratt, Arvidsson, and Burakovsky. But still, this is a team that on any given night you feel like can certainly be competitive at the very, very top of international hockey.
Yeah, and right away it jumps at me, goaltending. I mean, wow. I mean, that's pretty strong right there in net. And you're right, on the back. So they're built from the back end, right? Built
Yep.
from a lot of experience on the back end, a lot of range, lengthy. Hedman's a big guy. Ekman Larsson's got a lot of range. I mean, Ekholm's a big guy. So you're talking about nice little mix back there. You're right, a little experience in a sense. They're getting a bit older. Not as much firepower up front, but then goaltending really solid. So more built from goaltending and D, going up to the way they're the way they're lined up. But it's pretty cool that, again, if you were going to tell me like I'm taking Team Sweden, I'd be like, I wouldn't say you're stupid. You know what I mean? Like I'd be like, yeah, I mean, they got a chance to win. They do. I mean, especially with the goaltending and you're not talking about a 4 out of 7 series. It's a 2-week tournament. And there's a lot of obviously winning you're in or losing you're out, and it's a different mentality. And they got a little bit of everything. If they want a guy like Eriksson Ek to go shut David or guys like that down, they got a little bit of everything to do so, and they got some skilled. When you look at Willie Stiles there, Nylander, and Forsberg, but I wouldn't want to play against frickin' Eriksson Ek, Lindholm, Backlund. I mean, those guys are they're not fun to play against. Like, meaning you're not going to get a lot of scoring chances when you're playing against guys like that.
Yep.
And I think, with Sweden, there's youth coming up the ranks, too,
Yeah.
that can be represented in future tournaments, like Leo Carlson one day.
He's the one guy I felt bad about leaving off this list.
Well, and it may be, but it feels righteous. It feels like he's only just completed his rookie year and was, limited, and kind of, they unveiled this plan for him, and I thought he handled it really well. I'm excited for what some of the youth of Sweden, too, will continue to keep this a really competitive roster. And I got to shout out Adam Larsson for the D-core is like, all right, the depth even for the D-core is pretty strong.
Agree.
Goaltending feels really strong. I'll shout out USA. I feel like USA has the most goaltending options
I would agree.
that make them the most competitive of any country. But Team Sweden's goaltending stacks up really well. So it's an intriguing lineup, and I'm trying to just kind of compare who I had for my projected Sweden to see who's maybe not here, and it's pretty comparable. Is Jesper Bratt on there?
Yeah, Bratt is a fourth liner for me.
Yeah, that's pretty appropriate. Lucas Raymond, is he a little bit fringy?
It was between him and Kempe for me.
Okay, I would do Kempe over Raymond, similarly.
But yeah, he could be on there. And this is like, I just threw Burakovsky on there like, okay, what if everyone was healthy?
No, I like it.
So, but you're just the fact that we're talking about, hey, Sweden has options here. They can make some choices the same way teams like Canada and the US are making. I wanted to go to them first because I think Finland is a very good team, but they just don't have that level of depth where it feels like they're leaving off some high-end names when you look at their lineup. So, and don't get me wrong, the top of Finland's lineup is as good as anyone. You're going to see Mikko on there. You're going to see Barkov on there. It's just you get down to that third pairing, that fourth line. I have Jesperi Kotkaniemi as their 4C. Don't get me wrong, solid NHL player, but compared to some of the other centers that teams are taking, it maybe doesn't quite live up to the hype. Same with that bottom pairing, Jani Hakanpää and Henri Jokiharju. That feels like a third pairing for an NHL team, not an international roster team. With that said, a Heiskanen and Lindell pairing is fucking sick at the top of that lineup. They have a super solid starting goaltender in Jussi Saros. For me, I think Finland is a pretty clear number 4 here, but am I just a hater?
The center depth is troubling.
Yeah.
Because I like the forward group, but the center depth is what's troubling. Like, there's some wing spots that I could see more interchangeably, but there just aren't a lot of options down the middle.
Yep. Meanwhile, Canada's going to bring 9 centers of their 12 forwards.
That's what I was saying. Like, that's what's making their top power play unit kind of crowded. They have to make some decisions in terms of role for that.
That's true.
I mean, it's by far the number 4. I mean, you're not wrong. I mean, man, you put that in front of 100 people. I I think it goes 100 for 100, then that's 4, right, out of 4, if you're looking at the 4 rosters we've been looking at. Then again, Saros catches fire. Barkov is the best two-way centerman in the NHL. To a certain extent, you can arguably argue that. And Mikko, we all know about Mikko. So, but you're right, that top pairing, then it falls off. Those 4 guys are, God, I mean, it could be 6 Ds in or even 7 in some teams in the NHL. There's not a lot of, I mean, I like Hakanpää, for example. As you guys know, I love him, but I'm talking about 2-3 years ago as a depth guy for an organization. That's what I was looking at him for. You know what I mean? So now we're talking about Olympic/international competition rosters. You know what I mean? So there's a big drop off there, and that's why Canada, that's why U.S., their depth, their pool is so much bigger than a nation like Finland that you're seeing right now. But pretty impressive. That there's guys that obviously can form a team. Man, I say they're 4 out of 4, but again, it's all you freaking gel in those 2 weeks, and it's all you freaking play together, and and that's. But you're right. If it's just on rosters and on paper, that would be my 4th team. You know what I mean? Like 100. I mean. Maybe you add Lankinen because he's done so good at the international competition.
You could, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just saying, again, Saros is clearly ahead. But, instead of Ranta might be the 3rd guy or whatever. Or our boy Justus Annunen. And then, but, yeah, it's clearly 4 out of 4. Yeah, down the middle, it's compared to the other ones, it's average at best, And the depth on the 4th line and these 2 through 6 are a lot less inferior. They're more inferior than the other 3 nations.
I like the Olympics more than this 4 nations concept, but what I do like about this 4 nations concept is the fact that you look at Finland as, call them the 4th best team if you want to, but you're still fully would not be surprised if they win the whole tournament.
Yeah, they've got Sasha Barkov.
Right.
I'm not counting them out.
You feel like these games matter, whereas if you go watch an Olympics, you start with pool play and the U.S. blows out Japan 13-1 or whatever, and it's like that game is meaningless. Japan never had any chance of coming even close to winning the tournament. It feels like they're, at least in an event like this, all the games will be meaningful. Either team could win either game, and that's good. Unfortunately, there is no Russia. There are no some of these other teams where you feel like they probably won't win, but they could, and that's where the 4 nations concept kind of comes up a little bit short for me. I get that it's NHL run and they only want NHL players and whatever, but that's stupid. Just have an international competition if you're going to have an international competition. But I'm curious on you guys, outside of Russia, who probably they could make an argument could rank ahead of some of these teams at this 4 nations, but just they aren't here because geopolitical stuff. Who else is the closest to these 4 nations as far as international teams?
I guess it depends on how you evaluate it, because teams like Czechia and Germany have top-end representation, but if you're filling out a 23-man roster, it starts to become a challenge. And so I might give Czechia the nod ahead of Germany, even though there are players like Peterka and Mo Seider and Draisaitl represented there. Like, the rest of that 23-man roster is a little harder to fill.
5 really good players and then a bunch of dudes.
Whereas with Czechia, there's a little bit more to fill out that roster. And that's where I think they got the short end of the stick in this 4 Nations face-off, and not having some of these players represented is they might have run into an even worse Finland situation where it's kind of hard to fill out the fringes of the roster. But, they're up and coming, and I know it's just the World Championship, but they bring home the gold medal with the tournament that they did in the summer. And so you're not seeing Tomáš Hertl and Pasternak and Nate Chess and Hedl and Lucas Dostal. I think that is a little bit sad to have some of the Czechia players not represented.
Czechia certainly could fill out a forward group. You get down to the bottom of it, and you're having like a Zadina on there. Probably not to the talent level of some of these other teams, but they could fill out a forward group. It's the defensive side that gets hard for Czechia right now. You have Hronek at the top, great. You're immediately going to like a Gudas or a Jan Ruda after that, though.
Yeah.
Could kind of maybe spin it a little bit and bring Jiricek, some of the younger guys, just about fill out a roster. They should have been there. In my opinion, they should have figured out a way, one, to get more teams here like Czechia, and two, I don't want to go too far into this topic because I'll just make everybody mad, but they're athletes. Let Russia play.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, but then again, I think that if they would have gone to all those nations, they wouldn't have had that tournament. I mean, I think they would have just stuck to an all-star game, It's too hard in that setting, I think, to do what they were trying to pull off. And I think it's just getting their feet wet. But I agree with you. I mean, for me, they should all be there, or do it or don't do it. That's why, I'll say it. I've said it. I'll say it again. It's not my – again, they haven't played yet, but it's not my favorite tournament. It's not going to be my favorite thing, I just – whatever. I hate those in-season things. If it's not the Olympics, then, whatever. I'm just kind of like, yikes. I'm going to shut the league down for 2 weeks. But over the years, I'm looking at obviously Germany, Switzerland, and like AJ said, Canada's overrated because he just wants to be Canadian. That's fine. We'll let you in, AJ. We'll let you in. We've let you in before. We'll let you in. I love you, buddy. But it's just, Germany. Here's what I'll say with those games, like Germany, Switzerland. You got to be careful, as we've seen at World Junior Championships. Like, you can't just go out there thinking that you're going to kill those guys. You know what I mean? Like, because those guys, for example, like Finland, you got Barkov right there. You got a good goalie, and you got that top pairing. You can just say, hey, guys, we're going to lock it down. We're going to try to win that game 1-0. It might be the most boring hockey game in the world, but they might be able to pull it off. You know what I mean? Because you do have the capabilities of players like that. So I think some teams, like you said, Czechia, it would have been nice to see. It would have been nice to see Pasta in that setting. It is what it is. They chose 4. It reminds me a little bit, and we should have Goo on the show, 1987. So that 1 year, they didn't do a All-Star game. It was the same thing. It was the NHL All-Stars versus the Russians. It was called Rendezvous 87 in Quebec City. And everyone was like, what the hell is this? Like, what? This is weird. Why not just do a Canada Cup? But it was the same thing. It was like a weekend or whatever it was. I remember just, I wasn't there because I don't remember, I was in 1987, but whatever. It was NHL All-Stars versus Russians. And it's kind of got that feeling to it a little bit. So obviously you have a lot of guys that are very good hockey players that are left off those rosters or those nations or, like Russians. So it is what it is.
I would say this. If the players care about it, the fans will care about it. That's how it is to me. We all know all of the players care deeply about the Olympics, and that's why we always get all excited about it. If I don't believe this is going to happen, but if all the players that go really care and they all really give it their all and they produce some really good hockey games, I think the fans will love it and it'll come out as a great success. I just expect a bunch of dudes to be going 80, 85% at the thing, and it's just kind of an okay break in the NHL season where they get together and play some exhibitions, basically. So I can see the vision on how it could be cool. I just don't think they're going to get there.
Do you think even
No, go ahead.
at 80%, it's still a really entertaining product?
I think it's cool. I think they need to encourage more international style hockey. I think it's a good thing for the sport. I think it's a great way for the NHL to get overseas fans to care more about the league. I
Do we
just don't
know-
think 80% hockey is that awesome.
Do we know what they win?
I don't know that they win anything really.
And I think we've talked about this off air. Like, I think that's like a huge thing when it comes to these smaller in season tournaments and stuff like that. Like, offer something good, and maybe they'll actually play a little harder. Whether that is like charity donation or home ice advantage in some way.
The
or
NBA
another.
can give out rings for summer league. You can give
Yeah.
out something cool for the international hockey tournament, right?
Well, if I was a player, here's what I'll say. If I was a player, I think I'd be excited. First of all, you're excited you're chosen because it is different. And like we said, that means you got a good chance to be chosen for the year after for the Olympics. It's just a fact. It's a fact the way it lines up. It's not a coincidence. The way it lines up, it's got a little bit of Olympic flair to it, right? And it's been years now. McDavid's never gone to the Olympics. Guys like that, they're going to put on a jersey with the USA flag or Canada or whatever it is, Finland. You get excited to play for your country. Absolutely. And I think it's about time the guys get to do that again because it means a lot to them. It means a lot to players to play meaningful, not world championship, meaningful international hockey. And again, I shouldn't say that. It's rude what I just said, but it is what it is. Now, if I was working for the Avalanche next February, here's what I'd say. I would close my eyes. I wouldn't watch one game. I would turn off my emails and texts and just cross my fingers that you don't get a text saying Mr. X, broke his toe or his ankle or, knock on wood. Like, I don't want to use names. I don't want to jinx anybody. And then you're just like, are you kidding me? Like, are you kidding me? We have freaking 25 games left, and now I'm down one of my best players. And that's why I just wouldn't look at my email. I wouldn't be able to breathe. So
Very much you're calling up the NHL people and be like, hey, can you guys put like pads along the boards like you did for Cale Makar's skate on the All-Star game a couple of years ago? Like,
listen, I think Cale Makar broke curfew. I'm just giving
What if
you
we
a tip.
played?
He broke curfew.
He broke curfew. He is a bad apple. You don't want him.
What if we played in hamster balls?
in hamster ball, the little like Zorbs on the ice. Yeah, let's go. I'm in. I'm in for this. Keep Cale home. He's already announced to the roster, so it's not happening. But
Keep Cale home.
yeah, he's been hitting the Slurpees a little too hard. But all right, so there you have it. The Four Nations I think will be fun. I like it better than an All-Star game.
I think it'll be a huge improvement.
So moving in the right direction at very least, but let's be honest, the Olympics is the big one we're all waiting for. So is what it is when it comes to international hockey. We'll see in 7 months time. That's February. Yeah. So 7 months away from the big international hockey event. That's all I had for today. We are going to wrap this show up. We will be back tomorrow, though, talking best expansion options for the NHL. So it should be a fun one. Also, just of note, I know I said this the other day, but we're going to reiterate it. Starting next week, for the next couple of weeks, our show is going to be at 11 a.m. Mountain Time. So 3 hours earlier than it goes live currently. Changing up things a little bit with it being NFL training camp season. So for those of you that can tune in for an earlier show, it's your time to show up and have a good time in the chat with us. Hope to see you there. We are out of here for today, and we will be back tomorrow.
We all silly like the mayor.